Hello everybody, Video Game Growing Pains here, and since my last review was an early access game, let's kind of follow a trend. I've been playing Hand of Fate for a long time, since it was in early access, but it recently got a full official release on Steam, so I want to jump into it. To begin with, what is Hand of Fate? Well, Hand of Fate is a very interesting semi-roguelike game. You basically play against a dealer at the end of creation to decide whether you will live or you will die, going through what you might have memories of and fighting his minions until you can finally confront the master of the game himself. It's a very interesting and very powerful game, very imaginative, because it tries to blend some very common gameplay stylings with some very unorthodox storytelling methods. The game itself is told like a card game. However, the card game is very different from what you might expect. You play the piece on what could be described as a board game made of cards. Every card you unveil is an encounter of some description. Now, the encounters vary greatly. You can have encounters where you will fight in an arena. This is the most common type of encounter. You fight in an Arkham City-style arena battle where you are focusing on attacking, dodging, countering, and using special items to defeat your foes quickly. The more combo you build up, the stronger you become, and this is necessary for surviving against some of the later bosses. But the encounters can also involve you defending yourself, for example, from goblins who want to steal from you, or from the environment itself, trying to get through a maze of traps or dangers. The other most common encounter are simply text-based encounters, where you are given a card and you have an encounter come at you. You make a choice, and sometimes you have to decide through a random event whether or not you will succeed or fail. You always have some degree of choice here. The game is never completely fixed. However, sometimes it feels a little unfair. But this is actually the brilliance of the game, giving you the agency in combat, but also allowing you to experience these D&D style little small storytelling narratives. The linchpin that kind of holds this entire story together, though, is the dealer. The dealer is one of the few voiced characters, except for the grunts and growls of the monsters, and he is glorious. He is very dramatic, and he's very chatty, always giving some insight into the story or your character through each different encounter. He loves talking about the cards, about the changes in situations, about choices you've made. Here, take a listen for a second. Listen to what the dealer has to say.
Come to my table to play the game of life and death.
That's pretty cool, am I right? The trick of the game is that, like I said, it's kind of roguelike. Every time you die, or every time you finish a run, you start out with nothing. However, the game is played with a set of cards. You can stack the deck in your favor. Well, you can choose which encounter cards you get and which equipment cards you get. So, as you progress, you get better and better stuff. You can stack the deck in your favor to get good items to make your run easier. Some encounter cards will be locked, but you can always put the ones that you are used to or good at in there if you're having trouble. How do we get new stuff? Well, we complete challenges in these games and unlock tokens. Some of them are simply surviving an encounter, some of them are doing it in a specific way, and they're pretty cool. Some of them involve surviving mazes of traps, some of them involve doing the right thing for a sea captain, some of them involve other things. The game always continues from floor to floor. Each time you complete one floor of cards, you move on to another one, sometimes through stairs, sometimes through other means. The amount of variety in the encounters and in some of the basic card arts are the same. You could have a stairs down, or hitch a ride with a cart, or take a ship, or go through a portal. The game is bursting with variety, flavor, and color. One of the best parts of it is the atmosphere. It feels very much like you are playing a game with a very noble and respectable dealer who also wants you dead. He's very much a bastard, but he's also charming in his own way. And the atmosphere from the music kind of sets that tone. It's very dark, somber, and mysterious, but at the same time, very Arcadian. Whenever you visit a shop, it feels very calm. When you get into battle, it feels very tense. And when you're just going through your encounters, it feels very mysterious and foreboding. It's an incredibly interesting game that really requires a lot more skill than you might think. You will not be able to button mash this one. The arena-style combat focuses very heavily on parrying and getting out of the way. You can button mash through your first few encounters, but the enemies get stronger and crazier. First, you just have the basic bandits. Then you have skeletons, who have shields. they are very hard to get around if you don't shield block them or if you don't counter them. And, not shown here, are Ratmen and Lizardmen. Very strong. And we have some stronger, bigger monsters too, including Lava Golems, Minotaurs, and Liches, to name just a few. The boss enemies and some of the special ones are introduced through really cool cinematics, and the game is all about taking them down. You take them down, you advance to the next card. You advance to the next card, you get closer to getting upgrades, which both you and your enemies get, and with those upgrades, you make the game easier and harder. It's a game that grows as the players grow, and while I can't show it here because while I have beaten the game on early access, I wipe my data to try and go fresh. So there is also an endless mode where you will play until you die. This is pretty fun, but it does leave a few things to be desired, mostly in terms of how hard it gets later on because of the curses which mount on you. Now, let's just break the game down a little bit. Combat. Fluid, fun, very quick, very easy. They've really worked out a lot of the bugs from early access. It feels very much like an extension of your control. Countering is easy, dodging is easy, keeping your counter up is easy, and they have a nice risk-reward system where if you will try to kill a downed enemy, you can do extra damage, but you are slower and you might actually get hit from guys behind you. You can also get relics and special weapon powers to use when you're fighting. This makes the game very interesting because the more weapons you unlock, the more variety you have. Music and sound, as I said, are excellent. The music is foreboding when it needs to be, and a very medieval-style Arcadian timepiece when it doesn't need to be. The dealer is the linchpin, as I said. His voice is glorious to listen to, and you'll want to replay this game over and over just to hear all the different dialogues he says. The game evolves as you play with it, and while the graphics aren't always the greatest, if you kill an enemy you get a slow-mo and their body ragdolls, and they might fall through scenery, or sometimes polygons will clip. But it works. It's trying to get across a specific mood and feeling, and I honestly think that the graphics are pretty cool for what they've done. They've saved a lot on the budget by only having arena battles through certain encounters, and the rest of the story being told through your basic text encounters. And surprisingly, it's really tense and really enjoyable. You're able to do a lot of varied things without having to be shown what you're doing. It's very clever in that way. Hand of Fate is unlike a lot of games out there. It mixes arena-style combat from the Batman games with some text-based arcade-style games like Zork. But it does it all in a very engaging package, which keeps you wanting to play and keeps you wanting to unlock new cards. One of the big draws here is to unlock all the different encounters you can and to see how far you can go in the game. It's very, very interesting. And yes, it does get frustrating. Especially in the later game. Lizardmen are sickeningly strong with their shields and their fire-based attacks. Ratmen can poison you with their plagues. Skeletons will start raising from the dead, and the bandits start being able to throw knives at you. It gets pretty hectic, and though I've only shown you about 4 or 5 enemies on screen at a time here, I've had at one point 24 enemies on screen. And to its credit, the game handles them very well. There's not a lot of slowdown. I won't say it stays at a solid 60 FPS the whole time, but it's a really impressive bit of visual feat. They managed to keep the game very interesting, and it feels like you always have a chance, provided you know what you're doing. Most of the time you fail, it's not your own fault. Yes, you can get screwed. You need food and you need gold to keep advancing in the game. Otherwise you can't buy new items, and you can't buy food, and you can't survive. Food will heal you, food will kill you. Sometimes you just get screwed by the luck of the draw. But each time you have a chance to get better because the tokens you unlock stay with you. So, in that way, the game is actually pretty fair and pretty relenting. So, what do I think? I think Hand of Fate's a lot of fun. It can be frustrating, like a lot of roguelikes, but the narrator, the atmosphere, and the sheer joyful encounters you have every time you play make it a pretty solid time sink. I really like this game, and I would recommend it to just about anybody, which is what I'm doing here. Hand of Fate, ladies and gentlemen. Please, pick it up.